I'm writing it down in chat.
You're writing it down in chat?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, I do put in more grade. I even put in more grades than Miss Cookenbook. So if you're coming from her class, you will see that there is a lot of grades input in my focus. And that's for two reasons. One, it gives you plenty of opportunities to have an A in my class. And two, it tells me what you're doing and what you're not doing. So every classwork assignment, every homework graded does get put in the grade book. So that can be good or bad depending on who you are, but most of the time it ends up working out for the best for you because it gives you a good opportunity to earn an A or a B. Right, Hunter?
Oh, you were like really lagging out for me.
Oh. So if I put in a lot of grades, does that give you a lot of opportunities to get an A or a B?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It
Is there
does.
any excuse as to not have an A or a B in my class?
No.
Not really. So that's just how my class works. If we do, and I also do a lot more of quizzes, exit tickets, aka like assessments, tests in my class than in any other class. I mean, then not in any other class because there's other classes that definitely have more assessments than I do. But I do have more than Nicole, Miss Cookenbook, sorry. So you'll see a few more quizzes opportunities, which is good for you as well because it gives you more opportunities to improve your grade because assessments are 70% of your grade. So any questions as far as that before we get into notes?
Wait, is that all the expectations? Because I put mainly a summary of it in chat.
Yes, that's really all the expectations. I just wanted to review. Thank you for doing that. I just wanted to review kind of what I do and how things for me may be different compared to Miss Cookenbook. Because I know that the students that are coming over for me, there's a few things that I'm aware of that I do differently than she does. But for the most part, we do all the notes the same. We expect the same for homework. She puts it in sometimes as a group, whereas I put everything in individually. But other than that, that's about it. Our expectations are pretty similar. My goal for you guys, for all of my students, is to end with an A or a B at the end of the semester because I want you to have a good GPA when you get to high school. So that is it as far as reviewing expectations. All right, so we're going to get started at the notes. Did everybody see the classwork assignment?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if you printed those out, you can go ahead and use those. If you don't have a printer, that's fine. Just write in your interactive notebook. And I am going to share my notes screen. And Hunter, it does that because you're making a noise, so it thinks that you're trying to talk when your mic is muted. But I appreciate you being muted while you eat chips. Because that
So you're
sound makes
saying
me
that I
angry.
should be unmuted when I eat chips?
No, do not unmute when you eat chips, please.
Very
You will
interesting.
drive me insane if you do that.
All
Do
right.
not unmute while you eat chips.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our notes.
Hang on, I don't have a pencil. The one thing that I need, I don't have.
Come prepared, Hunter.
I printed out the thing. No.
You
I
just need
cleaned
a
off my
pencil to write it.
desk.
Okay.
I
Fine,
cleaned off
I
my
forgive you.
desk yesterday, and I completely misplaced all my pencils. Hang on.
Oh, no. Well, don't do that. All right. So two-way frequency tables. You guys have seen a two-way frequency table before, correct? In pre-algebra?
All right, I have one.
Yes. This is a two-way frequency table right here. Oops. You guys have seen this before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're dealing with a two-way frequency table, there's different things that we need to find. So let's review what it is and what it means to find our relative frequency. And then we're going to find all these different types of relative frequency with fancy names. And this is all we're working on for the whole week is two-way frequency tables. So a two-way frequency table is a table that displays the relationships between the data of two different variables. Why? There we go. And this is also called bivariate data. So we're looking at two different variables, and it's also called bivariate data.
I have a question. For people who aren't here, are you gonna post the notes in like a chat, like you usually do?
Yes,
All right.
I will post the notes, and I will also post them in the Algebra Nation Section 10 channel once it's set up. Apparently, I have not set it up yet in this group, but that's all right. I will add it today. I'll do a Section 10 and post these notes in there. When I pre-record them, I don't post them until after the fact, because then otherwise people don't watch the recordings or get the notes. They just copy them down. So relative frequency is the number of times something occurs. And I cannot write today. Divided by the total. And it can be written as a fraction, decimal, or a percent. Most of the time, they're going to ask for a percent, but not always. So it's just the number of times something occurs, and then it's divided by the total. So the best way to understand this material is just by doing examples. So Mr. Stanford asked the students in his class if they studied for the test or not. Then he recorded how many students passed the test and how many failed. He organized the data into a two-way frequency table. All right. So here we have a table, and we need to first remember our rows and columns. So I'm going to highlight my first column, passed, and highlight the numbers underneath. Then I'm going to highlight the column failed and highlight the numbers in that column. Then I'm going to look at my rows, and my rows are studied and didn't study. Please make sure you're muted unless you are participating. Thank you.
Marquise has his hand up, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Marquise, you have a question?
No, I did. I just forgot to put my hand down.
Oh. What was your question?
It was just stretching.
I was just gonna ask if you could move it back up because it was glitching, but it's fine now.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'll see. If you write a comment, I can see that because I can look at the separate computer. So I'm going to highlight my total as 30. So what does that 30 mean? What is that 30 telling me?
How many people were surveyed?
Yeah, that's the total number of students in his class. Okay. This down here, the other totals, so the 13 and 17, and then the 15 and 15. Those are giving me the margin totals. Those are the totals for the students in that area. So those are going to be important as well. Okay. So let's look at this. It says how many students studied. So how many total students studied?
13, but sometimes if you don't study, you can still pass.
No, look at our total. Look at the total in the row for studied.
15.
15.
Oh, 15. No, I'm sorry.
15 students total studied. Okay. How many students failed? We're looking at a column now.
15.
Okay, so this is the column we're looking at. How many students failed?
17.
17.
Why am I am the worst.
You're just confused. You don't have that math brain ready to go yet today.
No, I had no sleep, so that must explain a lot.
Mm-hmm. So now question 3 says, how many students did not study and failed the test? So we have to qualify for both. So did not study, so we're going to look in this row, and failed the test, so we're going to look in this column. So how many students fall into that category?
14.
14. Okay. Now, what percentage of students did not study? Now that we're looking at a percentage, and we want to know how many students, what percentage of students did not study. So what two numbers do we need to compare?
17 and 30.
17. Oh,
Wait, not 17.
no, that's not right. I was like, wait a second. Did not study.
14 and 30?
So 15 students total did not study, right? That's our total from that row. So 15 out of how many students did not study?
Out of 30.
Out of 30. So what percentage is that?
50%.
50. Okay.
So that is 50%. Okay, so 15 out of 30. So this, and we'll come back to that in a second. We're gonna leave that alone. So what percentage of students passed the test? Now we're looking at students that passed. So we're looking at a column, and we need to know what percentage of students passed the test. So how many total students passed?
13.
13. And we have to divide that by what?
By 30.
By 30. Because that's the total number of students in the class. So 13 divided by 30 is going to give you 43.33%. Because again, they're asking for a percentage. Okay. So those are just both different types of relative frequencies that we found. Okay. Now it says out of the students that passed the test. Okay, so now we're looking at students that passed the test. What percentage studied? Okay, so passed the test. How many total students passed the test?
13 passed.
13 passed. And of those 13, how many studied?
12.
12.
12. Okay, so that percentage is going to be 92.31. So what is the relative frequency? Here's that vocabulary word. What is the relative frequency of students who studied and passed the test? So we need to look at students who studied and passed. And this keyword relative is telling us that we are comparing it to the total, okay? So how many students studied and passed? Which number? Remember, we're looking in this row and this column. So where do those 2 points intersect? That studied and passed. How many total students?
12.
12. And because we're dealing with the relative frequency, we have to take that to find that percentage. It's going to be out of 30, okay? Because that's our total number of students. Oops. So 12 out of 30 is actually equal to 40%. What is the relative frequency of students who failed the test? Okay, now we're looking at students that failed. I'll do a different color. So failed. How many total students failed the test?
17.
17. And what do we need to take that number out of?
Out of 30.
17 out of 30. Again, that 30 is the total. The 17 was one of my margin totals, and that's going to equal 56.67% is the relative frequency of students who failed the test. Okay. Is there, oops, somebody's trying to enter.
Is there another new student?
No, just Marquise was coming back. That's all. So is there an association between studying for the test and passing the test?
The more, usually, the
Well, look at
People
the
actually-
data. Is there an association with studying and passing?
if you study, you're more likely to pass the test than people who don't study.
Exactly. So yes, there is an association.
Finally, I got something correct. Let's go.
You are more likely to pass if you study. Okay. So is this statement always true? If a student studies, they will pass the test.
No,
Is that always true?
no.
No. Some students studied and failed.
I don't study for my science tests, and I still get B's and A's.
Well, that's good. So no, some students studied and they still failed the test. So some of these things that we found in here are specific types of relative frequency. So I want to cover those real quick, okay? Because with relative frequency, I'm trying to get the perfect zoom so I can write. All right, we'll just do it like this. With relative frequency, you can have three different types. You can have conditional, you can have marginal, and I'm going to change this to pink, and you can have relative or joint, sorry. So an example of conditional relative frequency would be 12 over 13. I'll rewrite that in a second. So 12 over 13 would be conditional. And that's because that's taking this 12 from my column and dividing it from the total in that column. Another example of conditional relative frequency is going to be, would be 1 out of 15. You can do it by the row, okay? So that's called conditional relative frequency or conditional frequency. No, it is conditional relative. Then when we're dealing with joint relative frequency, okay, an example of that, of joint, is going to be any of the numbers, and I'm going to circle this here, any of these numbers here in the middle is your joint. And you're going to compare that to your total here. Okay. So an example of joint relative frequency, and you will see this in Math Nation and they go more in depth, would be 12 out of 30 or 14 out of 30. Okay, you're comparing it to the total, and the joint part is coming from the middle. So it's coming from those middle 4 boxes. So it can be either from a row or a column, it doesn't matter, but you're comparing it to the total. And I'm going to erase this marginal and put it over on the other side just for more space. Then we have marginal relative frequency. And when we see the word marginal, all we need to think about are our margins. Okay? And so we are comparing the totals in our margin to our grand total. So that an example of that would be 15 over 30 or 17 over 30 or 13 over 30. Understand? So that is a marginal relative frequency. We're just comparing the totals that came from our margins to our total number surveyed. Okay, so looking back at the questions that we did, and it says, what percentage of students did not study? What type of frequency did we find there? We had a 15, right? That 15 came from our margin divided by 30. So was that marginal, conditional, or joint? That's a marginal frequency. What percentage of students passed the test? Again, we had the 13, which was a total from our margin. So that is a marginal frequency percentage there. Out of the students that passed the test, what percentage studied?
You are cutting out for me.
Oh, I'm cutting off. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. So out of the students that passed the test, what percentage studied? That's a conditional. Okay. Then the last two that we did, what is the relative frequency of the students who studied? And then the other one, what is the, well, one of them is joint.
Alexander said, what is joint again?
Joint is when you are taking these middle numbers right here, the 12, 3, 1, and 4, those middle 4 boxes, that's part of your joint. If you're comparing those numbers to your total number surveyed, that's a joint relative frequency.
So for example, 1 over 30?
1 over 30 would be an example of joint relative frequency, yes.
Oh my gosh, I thought I was going to look like an idiot again. Let's go.
And I'll even include that example there for you. Okay, so that's an example of joint relative frequency. Now, what is the relative frequency of students who failed the test? Well, now we're looking at the total students who failed, so that's a marginal number. That's the 17. So what type of frequency is that? That's a marginal relative frequency. Okay, so those are the 3 different types of relative frequency that you can have: marginal, conditional, or joint. And we found them already. I just wanted to clarify for you because they do talk about the different types in Math Nation, and I wanted to talk about them in class before you saw them tonight or this week in your notes. So that's all we're going to do today for our notes. We're going to continue I will post this recording. I'm going to download it, upload it to YouTube, and I will post it as well. And I'll add it to the assignment. So if it cut out for you, that's fine. You can always go back and get it. And I will post these notes in just a moment. So if you were able, you can take a picture of what you have so far and turn it in for your assignment for today's classwork. We will finish the notes tomorrow during class. So turn in this for today's classwork assignment and we'll do the next page tomorrow.
Will you deduct points if we don't turn the first thing in today?
Well, this is today's classwork assignment, so you have to turn in what you did during class.
Oh wait, is there like 2 assignments?
Yeah, so I will do tomorrow's notes tomorrow as a separate assignment.
Oh, all right, because that's what I was asking. Like,
yeah, so
right.
Just turn in what we did today for class for your today's classwork.
Also, me and Ileana both experienced like you lagging out like halfway through that recording session.
Yeah, that's why when it records okay. So I will just download it and upload it to YouTube and share that video. So it shouldn't lag if you need to get caught up. But I will just post a picture of the notes as well.
All right.
I'm actually going to stop recording, but I will leave the meeting open if you need to. But I'm going to stop the recording for now.